Hello and welcome to this, which is the first in a series of webinars to support you as a provider or a core staff member for mountain training. So in this first session, what I'd like to do is to look at your provider accounts and just give you a bit of a how-to guide and navigation around the system for you. So before we look at your provider area, I'd like to have a look quickly first at the provider and core staff area. So these are areas on the website specifically for you guys, and they contain banks of resources, advice and manuals, etc. for you as providers and course staff. So the two that we're interested in today are the Mountain Training England and Mountain Training Cymru provider and course staff areas. So which one you use will depend on which board you're approved to work through. So the links are mountain-training.org/England or Cymru. And for today, I'm just going to quickly use the England area. So in the provider and course staff area, on the main page, you'll find the details of the people who work with the individual awarding body. You'll also find a copy of the latest strategic development plan. On the right-hand side, you'll also find a number of pages that will contain the resources that you are likely to need. So your provider agreements, as a new provider, you will need to have a look at this and confirm that you are happy with this. There is also a quality manual for the leadership and the skills awards, as well as the basic scheme information, resources downloads, and so on. If you can't find what you need here, do feel free to get hold of us and we'll probably be able to either direct you to the right area on this page, or if the information isn't there, we'll be able to help you directly. So that's your provider and course staff area. So if next we go on to accessing your provider accounts, so there are two main ways that you can access this. The first is going to be through My Organisations. The second is going to be through your username, both of which are on your main mountain training account. So I'm just going to go through the process of that using the candidate management system for you. So here's my personal account. So first of all, you can see there's a list here of all the organisations that I work for and the role that I have for those organisations. So the one that we're going to look at is Cowboy Adventures. So I'm currently a manager for this account. So I'm able to click on that and it would take me to the provider accounts. So the other way you can do this is through the My Organisations tab here. This will give you a list of all the organisations that you've been connected to in the past. Generally, those that you are a member of staff for or that you are a manager of will be higher on this list. So if I'm going to be looking at the Cowboy Adventures, I can see it here. Before I move on to the provider account, the other thing I just wanted to highlight is your directorships tab. So it's found under My Organisations and Directorship. And this will list all of the approvals that you have for running the individual courses. So you'll see there's the skills schemes, introduction, intermediate, and the sort of low leader training and assessment, for example. I would recommend this is the first place that you go once you've been given your approvals, just to check that they've been added correctly. And if you've got anything missing or if you've got something that you think you shouldn't have, please do let us know and we can have a look into that for you. And you'll probably also notice that there is a withdrawn button. So if you have an approval withdrawn from you, you will be able to see here when it was withdrawn. This particularly applies for people who used to run the older versions of the climbing schemes, so the single pitch award, for example. So using either the username menu or going to My Organisations directly, I can find the provider account that I'm interested in and I can click on that. It will then take me to the account for that particular provider. Now, as you can see, I'm a manager for this page. So within the provider accounts, there are two statuses. You can either be a manager or you could be a staff member. If you're running the provider account, you will be listed as a manager. You may also have additional members of staff that you want to be managers, They may be administrators within your office, or it may be that you work very closely with certain directors and that you want to give them additional rights. The rest of the staff, so that's most of us that would be working on a course, will be staff members. These are people, we don't need to see all of the detailed information about payments, for example. And as a result, you will only then see what you need to see to be able to run your courses effectively. I'm going to start out by looking at this as a manager. I will then give you a demonstration of the things that you can see and do as a staff member as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through each of these tabs in turn, not going to be in the right order, and I'm just going to explain to you what you can do, what you can edit, and as well what a staff member can do and what they can edit. So if I return to the provider accounts, so under the details page, you initially will see the page as it would be visible to the public. So you can see the contact details for the provider account. You can see the statistics for this account. So obviously, Cowboy Adventures isn't a real provider. It's a dummy account that we use for testing. Therefore, it hasn't actually run any official courses. And you can also see where we are based on a map. So as a manager, you're able to edit this page. So once you've pressed edit, you'll get a drop-down list that looks a little bit like this. So the main details are the details that you will have provided to us, and we will have entered these for you. The trading name of your provider account is something that you have given us, and if you decide to change this name, you will need to contact us, let us know, so that we can update this with the board. The email will be the contact email that you originally gave us. You can change this should you need to. And the name of the administrator would be the person who's the main person responsible for the provider accounts. You can add in registered company numbers, your charity numbers, etc., if they apply to you here. These aren't essential though. So the next tab is your address. So the elements that have a red star have to be completed. I will have already entered this for you using your provider application paperwork. If the address is different, please do make sure that you update this. The contact details, then you can add in telephone numbers. If you have a fax machine, you can add that as well. We do have a few people who still use a fax machine, so it's worth keeping it there. So the next section is about us. So here you're able to add text. It is formatable, and you can also add links and images. What I would recommend is that if you write it separately in a Word document or something similar, make sure that you've done all your spell checks, make sure that you've followed all of your links, that you're happy with that. You can just cut and paste it straight into this box. You can also write it in here if that's easier for you. Whatever you do, make sure you press save. So next section then is your public profile. So this is where you can add links to your website. You may have contact us link, and you may have terms and conditions that you want to specifically link them to. I would recommend very highly that if you have a website that you do link it up. It gives that little bit more information then to the candidate on the mountain training side, and they can find you nice and easily. The last one then here is your logo. Now, I highly recommend that you do have a logo on your mountain training account. They're very simple to put on. So you would click on the little picture here, press select, press upload, and then you can browse your computer for an image, which you can then drag and drop into this top box here. As with everything else, please do make sure you press save before you do carry on. So it is important that you add a logo. And the reason for this is that the Find a Course page that's on the website will show the logo of the provider that's running a course. And if your logo isn't attached to your account, you'll end up with a grey dot. And when your average candidate is looking through the system, they're more likely to be interested if they can see a specific provider logo. A grey dot may be overlooked. So it's definitely worth making sure that that's on there. So the next section is the location, your map, and this will be linked to the address that you gave in the earlier section, so it will auto find that position. So the next section is the billing details, and as it implies, this is the details that we would need from you for financial billing. So if you can include the official name as it would appear on bank statements, etc., and the person that you'd like our finance team to contact with any billing information, and if you have one, your VAT number. And then the last section is your visibility or privacy settings. I would recommend that you leave them as they are. However, it may be that you don't want to show certain elements on your public page, so you can turn them off. So whatever you're doing on this page, please do make sure that you're regularly pressing save and that you press save before you leave the page, just to make sure that any changes you've made are actioned. So that's the details page. As a manager, you have access to edit that. As a staff member, you would not. So the next page that I'd recommend you go and have a look at is your status tab. Now I'm jumping a few, I will come back to those. But here you can check what approvals you have as a provider. And if you're a new provider, I would say it's one of the first places you need to look at, just to make sure that you have the correct approvals here and that you are all ready and set up, ready to go. So if you've got approvals missing, or if you've got approvals here that you weren't expecting to see, do get back in touch with us and we can make any amendments. We can look into it for you. So from status, the next page I'm going to have a look at is our people. So this page includes all of the staff that are linked to this provider account. So these can be set as staff. So these would be people who work on courses either as a director or a tutor or as an additional staff member. They could also be managers. So they also have the rights to be able to edit the account on the CMS system. So along with the name of the person and whether they're a member of staff or a manager, you can also see if they're a member of an association, you can see their CPD records and when their expiry date is. You can also then see any approvals that they have for particular schemes. And you can see how many courses they have run. As a manager, you're able to add additional members of staff. This is done using the admin tab at the top corner of the page. You would click add person. Now, what I would recommend here is rather than using the candidate's name, that you use their ID number. Realistically, if you're using a person's name, there could well be other people with the same name on the system and you may end up adding the wrong person in error. Whereas candidate ID number, there is only one for each of these. So you'd add in the candidate ID number and press next. You'll then be asked to confirm the details of that person. So you would press plus to add them. It would then give you the option of adding them as a manager or as a staff member. So once you've chosen the approval that you want them to have, you are able to press save or close, or you can press save and add another if you've got multiple members of staff that you want to add. What I would say is when you're adding a new member of staff, if they're requiring additional access rights, so for example, if they're a person who is a director or a tutor, once they've applied, they will be given an email invitation. You do need to make sure that they follow the link that is on that email. Until they follow that link, they will not be added to your provider accounts. It's a way of protecting the data both for yourself and for them. If this is the only person that you plan on adding, you can press save and close. If you have multiple members of staff that you want to add, you press save and add another. If I then look down the list, I should be able to find that Ivana Klimalot is there as a manager and a staff member now. So the next tab that we're wanting to have a look at is the courses tab. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this one because we will be covering this in the next webinar. So on this page, you'll have a list of the courses linked to the provider accounts. It's worth noting that this page will always auto set to today's date. So you will only ever see future courses when you first enter the page. If you're looking for a course that's already happened in the past, you will need to change that start date to a date in the past. So for example, if I go back a couple of years, Cowboy Adventures will probably have a few more courses on here, as you can see. I'm not going to spend too much time on this page because we will be going over it in a later webinar, but just to mention that both staff and managers are able to create courses. The next page is course reports. As with the courses page, I will be going over this in a future webinar, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it now. So with this page, you can search by scheme. You can also search for a training or an assessment and by date. Okay, so then the next page that we're going to have a look at is moderation. Now this can only be seen by managers. And basically what you will find is each time you have a moderation visit, a report will be created and you'll find here a link to the course that has the moderation report attached. You can also search this by dates and you could search it by award scheme if that's appropriate. So the next tab is the emails tab. Now only managers will be able to see this tab. So there's very little you need to do on this page. Realistically, it's set up in its optimum situation as it is now, but should you need to, you can turn things on and off. The next tab that shows on my page is the admin tab. This is something that shows only for admins and neither managers or staff members will be able to see this. So pretend that's not there. So the files tab is where you're able to upload documents. I will use this as an administrator once you've completed your safeguarding paperwork to record copies of that information here. So we'll have a copy of your declaration on your provider account that's easily accessible should we need it. You can also upload additional documents, so it may be that you want to include your terms and conditions or that you have certain elements of paperwork that you'd like to be available to the public. I'm going to go to the resources tab next because this is the tab that you do need to action pretty quickly after having become a provider. So under this tab, you have access to your provider agreements. This is the document I mentioned earlier when I spoke about the provider and core staff area. This agreement does need to be approved by you. So you will need to tick this box to say that you have read and that you adhere to this. It also has a link to the provider and core staff area on this page should you need it. So then the last tab that I want to look at is the financial tab. So under this tab, you will have a list of the transactions that have taken place. Now, as Cowboy Adventures are never only courses, they don't actually have anything under here. But what you would find is you would have a list of all of the transactions that have taken place. So I'm going to swap accounts now to show you a different account. So this is an account that I use as an administrator. So this page looks a lot more like what you would normally see. So under the financial tab, you will find all of the information that relates to payments, etc. So the first box that you'll see is your balances. So as you can see, this is currently set at 0. That means that there's no outstanding payments. If there are outstanding payments, it will show here the total amount and it'll have pay now. That link will then take you to make any payments that you need to on the account. And if you follow the steps, you can allocate it as you see fit. The next section is your filters. So you can filter through transactions by the transaction ID or by the type of transaction it is. You can also search for a number of different things using this search bar. So it does give you a lot of very useful financial tools. So underneath then, you will have the statement of transactions. So it starts with the most recent at the top. So each year you will have annual fees and you will also have course fees per course based on each successful candidate going through those courses. Now each bill will show on here as an invoice. It will then have the payment linked to it. So once you've made payment, those two will be fully allocated automatically. Now, if you need a copy of any of the invoices, you can find it here. So you can view the details of the invoice. And you can see the details then in a document like this. You can then print this document and a PDF of it will be generated. So you can then print that off and use it as you need to for your paperwork. Close. So yeah, if you have any further questions about the financial side of things, please do get in touch. There are a lot more features on the new version of the website which allow you to have more flexibility and as well to be able to get your own documents from the system without having to request invoices or receipts, etc. So returning to the PowerPoint, what I've done is I've made a list of the rights of a manager and a staff member, just to make it easier for you. If you need to have a look at this at any time, the PowerPoint presentation is on the page with this video, so you can have a look at that in your own time. Okay, so the next page, I've put together an action plan of some of the simple steps that I'd recommend you do have a look at today. So especially if you're a new provider, just make sure that your provider account is up to scratch and that you've got everything in place ready for the public to be able to see. So number one, do make sure that your provider account contact details are correct on the website. If they're not correct, they're not going to be able to contact you. So first of all, do make sure that you have a logo linked to your provider accounts. As I said before, it does make it a lot more marketable if you've got a logo as opposed to a blank spot on the courses page, for example. Make sure that the provider name is correct. If it needs to be changed, do get in touch with us. Check that your telephone address, email contact details are all correct. And if you do have a website, make sure that the address has been added onto your mountain training provider accounts. Next, check that you have the correct statuses on your provider approvals. Then you can go and check your staff members on your provider account are correct. And if they aren't all there yet, you can start adding them if you are a manager. And then finally, have a look at the provider agreements. You'll find it in the provider and course staff area. You can also find it in the resources tab of your provider accounts. Once you've had a read through, please do tick the box on your provider account to prove that you've read and understand the agreements. So if you have any questions on anything that we've spoken about today, please do get in touch. And just another reminder, the provider and course staff area does include a lot of the information that you'll need to be able to work as a provider or as a member of course staff. So the links for those are at the bottom of the page here. I would recommend that if you are using the same computer on a regular basis, once you've gone onto that page, you may want to bookmark it or add it to your favorites. So I hope this has been useful. If you have any questions, please do get in touch. Otherwise, the next video is creating a course. Thanks very much.